Alright, imagine this for a second. You're walking outside, phone still in your pocket, the sun is right in your eyes, and suddenly your phone rings. You don't pull anything out. You don't stop walking, you just answer. Through your glasses. Now here's the real question. Does that moment actually feel futuristic in real life, or is it just a gimmick? Because when I used the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses after the latest officially available updates, something happened that I genuinely did not expect. And before we get into cameras, audio, or AI, you need to understand why that everyday moment changes how these glasses feel as a product. Stick with me because what seems simple at first becomes much more interesting the longer you wear them. When you first pick up the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, nothing about them screams tech. And that's important. These are real Ray-Ban frames. The weight feels familiar. The balance sits like normal sunglasses. You don't feel pressure points digging into your nose, and that matters more than people think. Because the biggest test isn't wearing them for 5 minutes, it's forgetting you're wearing them at all. And here's where the surprise begins. After a full day of use, they don't feel like a gadget. They feel like glasses that just quietly happen to do more. But wait, comfort is only the surface. Because once you start actually using them in the real world, things get interesting. Fast. Let's talk about walking. Just walking, no fancy setup. You're outside, traffic passing by, maybe the wind, maybe people talking nearby. This is where most smart audio devices fall apart. But the open-ear speakers built into the Meta Ray-Ban frames behave differently. They don't block your ears. They don't isolate you from the world. Instead, the sound feels like someone leaning in and whispering directly toward you. And here's the part I didn't expect. I can clearly hear phone calls without losing awareness of what's around me. Dogs barking, cars approaching, people passing by, they're still there. And that balance is crucial, especially if you're older, younger, or just cautious. But how does this hold up indoors or in a noisy street? Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. Now imagine a call comes in. You tap the frame. That's it. No phone in hand. No fumbling. The microphones pick up your voice from multiple points on the frame, and in normal conversation volume, the person on the other end hears you clearly. Not magically, not perfectly, but consistently. And that's the key word, consistent. I remember the first time I tried it while walking. I expected to end the call quickly. Instead, I finished the entire conversation naturally. And that moment made me realize these glasses aren't about showing off. They're about removing friction from tiny daily tasks. But audio is only one piece of the story, and the next part changes how you think about capturing moments. Because yes, there is a camera. And yes, it's always a sensitive topic. The Meta Ray-Ban glasses include a built-in camera designed for quick photo and video capture. No zoom tricks. No cinematic promises. Just a simple way to capture what you're already seeing. A button press, a short tap. And it records. The indicator light turns on clearly, and that's important. People around you can see when it's active. There's no hiding it, and that transparency matters more than specs ever could. But here's the question that kept me curious. How often do you actually want to record hands-free? Because once you start using it, the answer isn't obvious at first. Think about riding a bike or cooking, or holding a child's hand. Pulling out a phone breaks the moment. With the glasses, you capture without stopping what you're doing. The quality is what Meta officially states, designed for sharing, not filmmaking, and that honesty shows. It's not meant to replace your phone camera. It's meant to capture moments you would otherwise miss. But does that convenience outweigh the limitations? We'll unpack that when we talk about real daily usability, because this is where expectations can either be met or quietly adjusted. Now let's pause for a second and talk about connectivity, because none of this works alone. These glasses connect to your phone using Bluetooth and the MetaView app. Once paired, they behave like an extension of your phone, not a replacement. Calls, audio playback, photos, videos, everything flows through your phone. And that design choice explains a lot about how Meta treats these glasses. They're not trying to turn them into a standalone computer. They're trying to make your phone less distracting. But does that strategy actually work when notifications start coming in? That's where things get nuanced. You can control what comes through the glasses. Music plays directly into the open-ear speakers. You can pause, skip, adjust volume, all with subtle taps. And after a while, muscle memory kicks in. You stop thinking about it. But here's the unexpected part, because you're not sealed off, you don't feel rude wearing them. You don't feel disconnected. And for parents, older users, or even kids supervised by adults, that matters. This isn't escape tech, it's overlay tech. But now we arrive at the feature everyone wants to talk about, and the one that creates the most questions. AI. The Meta Ray-Ban glasses officially include AI voice interaction through Meta AI where it's supported. You say the wake phrase, you ask a question. The response comes back through the speakers. And it works like a voice assistant, no magic, no guessing. You ask about weather. You ask simple questions. You ask for information. It responds. But here's the twist. Using it through glasses feels different than using a phone or smart speaker. It feels more personal, quieter, more intentional. And yet, you don't always want to talk to your glasses in public, do you? That tension is real, and understanding it is key to understanding whether these glasses fit your life. Because once you move past the novelty, you start asking tougher questions. When do you actually use AI on glasses? When does it feel natural? And when does it feel awkward? That's where real-world usage separates marketing from reality. And in the next stretch, we're going to slow down and look at long-term wearability, social comfort, battery behavior during daily routines, and what happens when all these features collide during a full day of use. But before we do that, there's one small detail about how these glasses behave in noisy environments that completely changes how useful they are, and you're going to want to hear this before deciding if they're right for you. As the day goes on, this is where the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses start revealing their true personality. Not through one big dramatic feature, but through dozens of small moments stacking up. You're still wearing them. You've forgotten their tech, and that's exactly when the real test begins. Because now you're not trying features anymore, you're living with them. And that's when some things quietly impress you. And a few things gently remind you this is still a real product, not a sci-fi movie. Picture this. You walk into a slightly noisy place, maybe a coffee shop. Cups clinking, people chatting, music playing softly in the background. This is where I expected the audio to fall apart. But here's what actually happens. The sound from the glasses doesn't overpower the room, and it doesn't disappear either. Instead, it adapts to the environment in a very human way. Voices come through clearly enough to understand, but not so loud that it feels unnatural. It's like someone speaking close to you, not shouting in your ear. And that balance creates something unexpected. You don't rush to take the glasses off. You stay present, you stay comfortable. But what about the person on the other end of the call? That's the part I kept replaying in my head because the microphones matter just as much as the speakers. And in real use, they perform in a way that feels honest. When you speak normally, your voice comes through clearly. When you turn your head, the glasses still track your voice. But if you raise your voice too much or speak too quietly, the system doesn't magically fix it. And that's actually a good thing. It reminds you that this isn't pretending to be something it's not. It works best when you treat it naturally, like talking to someone beside you. And that design choice shows up everywhere in these glasses. Nothing feels forced. But there's more happening behind the scenes, and this is where daily usability starts to get interesting. Let's talk about music, because music through smart glasses sounds strange on paper. But in practice, it's surprisingly pleasant. You don't get booming bass, you don't get isolation. Instead, you get clarity. Podcasts sound crisp, voices sound natural, and music feels light. And I don't mean weak, I mean airy. Like sound floating near you instead of inside your head. When walking, especially, this matters. You hear your surroundings, you hear approaching footsteps, you hear cars. And for older users especially, this open-ear design feels safer. But here's the twist. Because once you get used to it, normal earbuds start to feel isolating. And that realization sneaks up on you. Now, here's a question I didn't expect to ask myself. When do I actually want to use these instead of headphones? And the answer changes depending on the moment. Walking? Absolutely. Quick calls? Definitely. Listening while doing chores? Yes. Sitting alone trying to fully escape the world? That's when traditional headphones still win. And that's not a failure. That's clarity. These glasses aren't trying to replace everything. They're carving at a very specific role and doing it well. But the deeper you go, The more you realize that battery life quietly controls everything, because battery life isn't flashy, but it decides whether a product survives in your routine. The Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses handle a full day differently, depending on how you use them. Light usage, a few calls, some music, a few photos, fits comfortably into a normal day. Heavy usage, constant audio, lots of camera use drains things faster. And here's the part that surprised me, because the glasses charge in their case, you start thinking about charging differently. You don't plug them in every night like a phone. You drop them in their case, and the habit forms quickly. But what happens when you forget? That's where you learn how dependent you've become. And yes, the case matters more than expected. It's not just storage. It's power, it's protection. And it's also a reminder that these glasses are still glasses. You're not wearing them 24/7. You take them off. You rest them. And that rhythm feels natural. But now let's shift focus, because we haven't talked about how these glasses behave socially. And this is where opinions split. Wearing smart glasses in public comes with attention. Not loud attention, quiet curiosity. People ask questions. They tilt their heads. They notice the small camera indicator. And surprisingly, the visible light actually reduces tension. People know when recording happens. There's no guessing. And when you explain that it works like a quick photo button, not constant recording, conversations usually relax. But still, you choose moments carefully. You don't record everything. You record what matters. And that restraint becomes part of the experience. Now let's circle back to AI, because this is where expectations often collide with reality. Meta AI in the glasses behaves like a voice assistant that lives closer to you. You ask questions, it answers. You don't scroll. You don't type. And when it works, it feels effortless. But here's the truth that doesn't get said enough. You don't use it constantly. You use it occasionally. And when you do, it feels helpful, not overwhelming. Asking the weather. Asking general questions. Simple, useful moments. And that simplicity makes the feature feel more trustworthy. But what about when you're surrounded by people? This is where self-awareness kicks in. You don't always want to speak commands out loud. And that's okay. The glasses don't demand constant interaction. They wait. And that restraint makes them feel respectful, not intrusive. But now we're approaching the part where everything connects together. Comfort, audio, camera, AI, battery, and daily habits. And this is where long-term use reveals something deeper about these glasses that I didn't notice at first, because after days of wearing them, something subtle changes. You stop thinking about what they can do and start noticing when they're missing. You reach to tap the frame during a call, even when you're not wearing them. You expect audio to just appear near you. And that's when you realize these glasses aren't about technology anymore. They're about behavior. And in the next stretch, we need to talk honestly about limitations, trade-offs, and the moments where expectations quietly reset, because that's where trust is built. And trust is what decides whether these glasses stay on your face or end up forgotten in a drawer. By the time you reach this point, something interesting happens. You're no longer impressed by individual features. Instead, you start noticing patterns. What the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses do well, what they deliberately don't try to do, and where reality gently pulls you back from the hype. And honestly, this is the most important phase, because this is where long-term ownership either clicks or quietly fades. Let's start with the camera, because this is usually the feature people are most curious about, and also the most misunderstood. Using the camera feels nothing like pulling out a phone. There's no framing screen in front of your face. No second-guessing angles. You press the button or use a voice command, and it captures what you're looking at. That sounds simple, but it changes your behavior. You don't take 10 photos of the same moment. You take one, and that one feels more intentional, more human. But here's the part people don't always expect. Because you don't see a preview, you trust the glasses more than you should at first. That trust grows with repetition. After a few days, you learn how the camera sees the world. You learn how turning your head slightly changes the framing. You learn when lighting works in your favor and when it doesn't. And this learning curve feels strangely rewarding, like mastering a skill instead of tapping a screen. But what happens when you try to use it in less than perfect conditions? That's where realism kicks in. Low light still matters. Fast movement still matters. These glasses don't magically ignore physics, and that honesty is actually refreshing. You start using the camera for moments that make sense. Quick memories, daily life, casual clips, first-person perspectives. Not cinematic perfection. And once you accept that, the camera becomes something you rely on quietly, not something you constantly test. But then there's the question everyone asks sooner or later. Do people notice? Yes, sometimes, and sometimes. They don't. The indicator light does its job. It signals when recording happens. And over time, you develop a sense of awareness. You don't just think about what you want to capture. You think about how it feels to be there. That awareness changes how you use the product. It slows you down. And weirdly, that makes the footage you do capture feel more meaningful. But now let's talk about something even more subtle. How these glasses fit into long days. Because comfort over hours isn't the same as comfort for 5 minutes. Weight distribution matters. Pressure on the nose matters. And here's what becomes clear after extended wear. The design succeeds because it feels familiar. They sit like normal glasses. They don't clamp. They don't demand adjustment every 10 minutes. And for people who already wear glasses, the transition feels natural. But for those who don't, that's where things get interesting. If you're not used to wearing glasses, there's an adaptation phase. Your face notices them at first. Your ears notice them. But then something happens around the 3rd or 4th day, they fade into the background. And that moment matters because once you stop feeling them, you stop thinking about them. And when a piece of technology disappears like that, it's usually doing something right. But disappearing doesn't mean perfect. And that's where we need to talk honestly about trade-offs. These glasses are not meant to replace your phone. And once you stop expecting that, they become more enjoyable. You still pull your phone out, you still look at screens. You still type messages. The glasses don't fight that reality. They complement it. They handle moments where a screen would feel awkward or unnecessary. And that division of labor feels surprisingly mature. But what about AI again? Because expectations around AI are high and disappointment often follows. Meta AI inside the glasses stays practical. It answers questions. It responds to commands. It doesn't interrupt you. And it doesn't pretend to understand context beyond what it's given. When you ask something clearly, it responds clearly. When you mumble or phrase things vaguely, it doesn't guess wildly. And that consistency builds trust. It feels more like a helpful assistant than a gimmick. But here's the catch. You don't always want to talk. In quiet spaces, in public, or around other people, using voice commands feels different. Sometimes you hesitate. And that hesitation reveals something important. The glasses respect your choice to stay silent. They don't force interaction. They wait. And that patience is something a lot of tech gets wrong. But now let's zoom out, because at this stage, you start comparing experiences, not specs. Compared to traditional earbuds, these glasses feel open. Compared to phones, they feel immediate. Compared to action cameras, they feel effortless. And each comparison shows a different strength and a different weakness. But the real comparison that matters is this. How do they change your routine? And the answer isn't dramatic. It's subtle. You take more calls while walking. You listen to more short audio moments instead of long sessions. You capture fewer photos but keep more of them. You stay present instead of staring down. And none of that feels like a forced change. It happens gradually, quietly. But what about the moments when things don't work perfectly? Sometimes commands need repeating. Sometimes background noise interferes. Sometimes battery anxiety creeps in. And those moments matter because they shape expectations. But instead of frustration, they usually lead to adjustment. You learn when to rely on them and when not to. And that learning creates a relationship with the device. It's not blind trust, it's informed trust. And now, after days or weeks of use, there's one final question left unanswered. Not, are these smart? Not, do they work? But something deeper. Something more personal. Do they earn their place in your daily life? And that answer isn't universal. It depends on how you live, how you move, how you communicate. And in the final stretch, we need to bring everything together. The moments that surprised me, the moments that grounded my expectations, and the quiet realization that changed how I look at smart glasses as a category. Because the biggest takeaway from this update isn't a feature, it's a shift. And that shift only makes sense once you see the full picture. And this is where everything finally settles into place. Because after all the daily use, the testing, the curiosity, and even the small frustrations, you start seeing the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses update for what it really is. Not a flashy moment, not a single killer feature, but a quiet evolution that changes how technology behaves around you instead of demanding attention from you. At this stage, the glasses feel less like a gadget and more like a companion you occasionally lean on. You don't wake up excited to use smart glasses. You just put them on, and that's the moment that surprised me the most. There's no ceremony anymore, no setup ritual, no novelty rush. They're just there, and that's not boring. That's powerful. Think about how often technology tries to pull you out of your surroundings. Phones buzz, screens light up, notifications stack. But with these glasses, interaction stays optional. If a call comes in, you hear it like someone leaning in and speaking softly. If music plays, it doesn't block the world, it layers over it. And if you don't say anything at all, the glasses don't punish you for it. They don't beg for interaction. They don't flash. They don't vibrate aggressively. They respect silence. And that changes behavior more than you expect. You start noticing your environment again. You hear your footsteps while listening to audio. You maintain eye contact while talking. You capture moments without stepping away from them. And once you experience that shift, it's hard to unsee it. This update doesn't push you toward more screen time. It nudges you toward less, and that's rare. But let's slow down for a second, because this is where honesty matters most. These glasses don't magically fit everyone's life. If you live inside apps, if you rely heavily on visual interfaces, if your phone is your main workspace, the glasses will feel supplemental, at best. They won't replace your habits. They won't reorganize your workflow. And they're not trying to. That restraint is intentional. The update refines what already exists instead of expanding into areas it can't support well. Audio stays clean and directional. The camera remains simple and fast. Phone connectivity works in the background instead of the foreground. And Meta AI behaves like a utility, not a personality. It doesn't perform, it assists. And for some people, that subtlety might feel underwhelming at first. But here's what flips the perspective. After a while, you stop asking, what else can it do? And you start asking, why do other devices need so much attention? That's when the update really lands. It's not about making the glasses smarter in a loud way. It's about making them calmer, more predictable, more reliable in everyday moments. Take something as simple as walking outside. No pockets buzzing, no screen glow. Just sound awareness and the option to act if you need to. Or imagine getting a call while your hands are full. No fumbling, no urgency. Just answer. Talk, move on. These moments aren't dramatic, but they stack. And over time, they change your relationship with technology itself. Even the limitations start to feel intentional instead of frustrating. The camera doesn't tempt you to overshoot. The AI doesn't pretend to understand emotions. The audio doesn't isolate you from the world. Everything feels designed to keep you present rather than pull you away. And that philosophy becomes clearer the longer you live with the update. And then comes the final realization. This isn't about what Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses are becoming. It's about what they already are. A bridge. Not between you and a screen, but between moments that usually get interrupted and moments that stay intact. This update doesn't shout. It doesn't demand headlines. It earns trust slowly. And trust, in wearable tech, is everything. Because you wear this on your face. You bring it into conversations, you take it into daily life. And anything that sits that close to you needs to feel respectful. Not invasive, not distracting, just helpful when invited. So if you're wondering whether this update changes everything, the honest answer is, it doesn't change everything at once, it changes small things. Quiet things, the way you listen, the way you respond, the way you stay present. And eventually, those small changes add up to something bigger than a feature list. And that's the part I didn't expect. Not the tech, not the specs, but the feeling that for once, a piece of wearable technology knew when to step forward and when to stay out of the way. And if that idea resonates with how you want tech to fit into your life, then you already know whether these glasses make sense for you. And if not, that's okay too. Because the smartest thing this update does is not trying to convince everyone.